from prototyping, you're hear different words like CAD or CAM. CAD is computer aided design, and we'll get into that in the next workshop, I believe. But CAM is what we talk more about today, and that stands for computer aided manufacturing. This is using computers to perform complex machine operations when you manufacture a product. Like, for example, you can see in the picture, it's a CNC mill, and there's a drill bit cutting out that part that you see. That's an example of CAM, since you're having a machine mill it out of the material for you rather than you manually going in and like controlling the drill bit to cut out your part. Today, we're going to teach you how to use the Glowforge to do manufacturing, and that's a laser cutter. So it'll cut parts out of flat pieces of material. So the Glowforge is a CNC machine, which basically means computer numerically controlled. And that tells you that you don't control the laser by hand. A computer does it for you. And it gives the machine points of, okay, turn the laser on here and then have it on for this power for this long as you move to this spot. And it uses a laser to cut or engrave materials such as like acrylic. You can cut through like paper, cardboard. You can engrave some soft metals like aluminum and stuff like that. And this is similar to subtractive manufacturing, like a CNC mill, since it takes a piece of stock and it cuts your part out of it. The opposite of that would be additive manufacturing, which is a process like 3D printing, which you start with nothing and you lay down plastic and material until you build up to your final part. So the parts of a laser cutter are shown right here. These are just like the basic parts that you'll find in any machine. You'll see a little bit more in the video that we have after this. So there's the main laser tube, which will shoot the laser through a plane mirror, and that'll then reflect the laser into the print head, where a focusing lens will like focus it down to the actual focal length it needs to cut through the workpiece. And you set that in the software to like focus on the head to find how far the top of the material is from the print head. And then underneath your workpiece, you have the workpiece supports, which is like a tray that just kind of, if little parts like as you cut them out, they fall, it catches those things so it doesn't get caught underneath the material and it doesn't hold it up. It just kind of leaves some empty space for parts to fall through. And today, for the example, we'll walk you through making these coasters. So you can see like I engraved the picture and then I cut out the side, but I can show you, there's another operation called a score. So that'll just kind of like draw the outline, and you'll see that in a minute. So for this demo, I'll show you how to do it in Adobe Illustrator, but if you don't have access, there's this free software called Inkscape you can always download, and it's the same exact thing. It just looks a little different, like user interface wise, but for the most part, it'll just function the same. These steps are about the same in both softwares. So you'll start with like a picture, and from there you can go in and use image trace. So what this does, it kind of like traces along the image at the breakpoints in the different colors. So for this, figured out low fidelity photo was a setting that worked well. And then from there, I can hit expand and ungroup, which will separate out the colors. So you can see here, I can like go ahead and delete the background. And then since when we engrave, we want to have it all like one color, so it's all one process, we can go in and combine all of these parts. So it's just one black image that we will engrave later. And then after that, we're going to go in and make the shape that we want. So I did a hexagon for the example, but let's say you want like a star. You can go ahead and make a star like whatever size you want. Let's say it's like 6 inches. But the important part is you're going to want to set the fill to nothing, because this is the part we're cutting out. We don't want this star to actually like be engraved or anything like that. So we're going to set the fill to nothing and the stroke to red. That'll tell the software, hey, this is a red line. I'm supposed to do something different with it compared to like a black picture. And from there, we can just go in and like scale it down to how you want, put it in the middle. That looks weird, so probably not in the middle, just kind of right there. And then once you're done with your design, you could always go ahead and save it as an SVG file, which is what you'll import into the laser engraving software to actually cut it out. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you how that software works and how you can go through the process of actually like taking your design and cutting it out. So this is the software. They recently updated it, so I don't recognize all of the commands, but basically what you're going to want to do is you'll like upload your image to it when you create a new project. So this also had a black image and then the outline was red. That color distinction was what separated the image from the actual outline of the coaster. And after we've selected a material, we can make sure which process we want for each part of the image. So there's three options. You can engrave, cut, or score. Engrave is like you can see here where it like fills in all of it like kind of colors it in with the laser, and like cut is where it just cuts through the material, and a score would be where it just kind of outlines your image and it doesn't fill it in. So I don't have an example of that one right now, but you can kind of imagine it just kind of drew an outline. So it kind of cuts like a quarter of the way through, but not enough to actually cut it out of the main piece of material. And like within each of these, there's different options of how you want this, how each operation goes. So for Engrave, you have draft, SD, HD. I usually just go with draft since it'll be fastest. And also I've seen similar results as with the SD one. Like they look pretty close for like a small size object. Cut, there's only one type of cut since how many ways can you cut all the way through a piece of acrylic, really? And then there's score, which is high quality score or draft score. High quality is gonna cut a little deeper, like I've seen like halfway through the 1/8 inch acrylic, and then draft will go about a quarter of the way, and then it usually takes about 4 times as long to do the high quality one. So for small stuff, draft works perfectly fine, unless you want something really high detailed. And then the fourth option is ignore, so it won't like do anything about that. So that's the basics of the software. They recently updated it so you can like create shapes inside of it and you don't actually have to use Adobe Illustrator at all. That's really nice. You can also put in text. So since we're not allowed at the Startup Center, I made a quick recording of the actual process of laser cutting, like what it looks like when it's going through. You can see I'm just making sure that it's engraving. I'll connect the machine. You can see the acrylic is being placed in the machine. Then there's a little camera on the lid that will scan it, take a picture of it, and upload it to your software so you can place your image without wasting any space. Like you can make sure to align all your different parts so you have as little like stuff in between the material. Like you can see right here, there's a little waste. You select your material again, and then you go and just double check like what the processes are for each part of your image. Like you want to make sure it's being cut, and if you want it cut or score or engraved. After that, it'll tell the machine, hey, there's a new job coming in. So the machine will go to that spot where you've placed your image based off the camera, focus on it, and then when it connects, this little blue light will start to pulse and you push the button, and then the actual the actual part will start. Here you can see the laser tube, the print head. The workpiece is the piece of acrylic, and the crumb tray is the support underneath. So you can see the little honeycomb pattern allows for small parts to fall through rather than like getting caught in the material as you're cutting them out. Also, like I mentioned before, this is the engraving process. So it just like does really quick, like really shallow passes like up the side, like the entire image. You can change how many like lines it does per inch of image. Like I think right now it's like 200 per an inch, but you can increase that if you want like if you have like a really small part and you want higher resolution on your final laser cut, or you can also decrease that if you really don't care what it looks like and you're just trying to get like a prototype done. So I use Adobe Illustrator because I had it, but I recommend Inkscape if you're getting started. So in real time, this part took, I think, 5 to 6 minutes. And that's what it looks like out of the laser cutter with the paper on it. It's like, it like protects it from being burned while you're cutting. No, it doesn't just take acrylic. You can also use like wood. We've cut leather before. We've also cut like cardstock, the stuff you put your resume, the thick paper that you put your resume on as well.
Also with the Adobe Illustrator question, so Inkscape is a good one that we recommend, but Inkscape only works on Windows. But what you can do is just look online for basically vector drawing programs, and you can look through the list of those and find one that you like. They should all work pretty much the same.
So there's also another one called Vector, VECTR. I think it's it's a web-based software. So I think it allows you to export as an SVG as well. I don't recall, but since it's web-based, you can use it on any computer and it's free for, no, users don't have to pay for the material that they use that we provide. But if you want something that we don't have, then we recommend you bring it in and just check with us that you can actually cut on it, that we can put it in the laser cutter safely before you buy it. So you can cut up to 1/4 of an inch in one pass, but I've seen people take it up to like a 1/2 of an inch of like a 1/2 inch thick piece of wood, and they just like cut 1/4 of an inch through, and then they flipped it over and cut the other side. And the maximum like width and length is like 12 by 18 inches. So it's also, if you can't run Inkscape on your own computer, when the SSC, like if when we're open in person, you can always come in and we have it installed on our computers, available for you guys to use.
And also, if you guys need help with any like making the graphics or just like learning the software, um, we're open to help you guys out as well. Just like send us an email.
Yeah. And also, oh wait, I forgot. Like SolidWorks and Fusion 360 export DXFs. You can always use that, and then we'll convert it to an SVG for you. Yeah, so our laser cutter is the same as like our 3D printer, where it's like the Cubase system. So you're gonna send us your file and either tell us, do you want it done for you, or do you want to like help and like be walked through the process. So if you want it done, we can just do it for you and then let you know when it's ready to be picked up. If you want the second option, just let us know, and then we'll schedule a time for you to come in and like watch the entire process take place, just so like for safety reasons, I don't think we're allowed to let anyone in the other room without a manager. And once we open, you can send us the file via email, or you can just come in with it. And if there's nothing in the queue, if you come in, then we can do it then. Um, Adobe Illustrator isn't super hard to learn. You can probably find like a good YouTube tutorial. That's how I learned. Um, but it just kind of just like I learned how to do one thing and then I'd practice it a couple of times. And then I guess that's how it is with most like software like CAD or anything else like that. You just need to do it so you can know how to do it. I find the most difficult part about Adobe Illustrator to be actually finding the different tools, since there's a bunch of menus and then sub menus too.
I find what helps with software like Adobe Illustrator and like CAD and stuff like that is to just have a project in mind. Like say like, oh, I really want to make like a coaster like we just made. So, and then as you start using it, you'll like start to realize, oh, to make this coaster design, I need to use this tool, or I need to use this tool, and then like basically as you make more and more projects, you start to learn all the different tools that just randomly come up. And from there, it's not like an overwhelming process of like, hey, I have to learn all of these tools all at once. It's like a gradual, like incremental process.
I agree. It's easier for me to personally learn stuff if I am applying it to something that I care about, rather than like, okay, cool, here's every tool in Adobe Illustrator, just memorize what it does. Um, it's easier to remember how it works in the context that you need it in.
So just an explanation of like what like a vector graphic software is. Um, so I'm sure all of you guys have used like Microsoft Paint before, right? So Microsoft Paint is more dealing with like pixels. So it's like dealing with pictures that have like pixels. So software like Illustrator or Inkscape deal with like actual like lines. Like they just consider like 2 points, like two like mathematical points, and then they just connect it with a line. So what that means is like you can keep zooming in into your picture, and you'll never get that, you know, that pixely quality that you get with pictures. And that's why people like them for stuff like cam stuff, like laser cutter or CNC or stuff like that, because it's literally just points that you connect.
Yeah, one thing to remember is like there's always like 15 ways to do something, not just the one way that we're going to tell you, or like the one way that we know. You should always like look into something that'll work better for your purposes, like given the software you have access to or given the machines you have access to. So there's always like trying to find a way around it.
So if there's no other questions, this is kind of like a shorter workshop, so definitely won't go into like the 2 hours that we've allotted for this. So yeah, so rest of this time is literally just question and answer. So just to clarify, there won't be a workshop next week because we're teaching these workshops on a bi-weekly basis this quarter. So it's going to be the week after next week, which is April 21st. All right, awesome. Thank you all for coming.